Hello and welcome to this special edition of Talk Show. We are covering Constituent Assembly election 2070 in Nepal. And in this talk show, in today's edition, I have with us Ms. Eva Joly, Chief of the European Union Election Observation Mission in Nepal. We would be talking with her about her observation of Nepal's election and also the latest developments and some of the other issues that have been released in the recent report, the preliminary finding. That's what the report is called, and the final report is coming up after the entire process ends. Ms. Joly, welcome to us, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think I should start with the hottest and the latest thing. Have you been following the things that's going around after the polling was over?
For sure, we are observing the whole process, so we are concerned with everything that happens.
What do you make out of some of the remarks of some of the parties, let's say Unified Maoist Chairman's recent comments that they would not take part in the counting now?
To me, what is important is that everybody plays by the rules. If you have suspicions, if you have allegations, and they could be serious in your mind, you should come up with your proofs and you should use the legal ways. You should use, the court system and the mechanism that is foreseen in the Nepalese election codes in order to settle conflicts. You cannot just go on by yourself, say, I will stop the counting. People of Nepal has given so much energy to these elections. They really want to know the results, and we cannot deprive them of the results.
That has to be settled by proper process, through a proper mechanism.
Absolutely.
Now let's move on to what you are here for, observation.
Yes.
In your report, the preliminary report that you have said, 97%
yes.
It was fair. What about the 3%?
Well, in these 3%, that means that this polling station didn't open at time, for instance, or that they had some difficulties finding the equipment. But we should really understand that 97% of compliance among the more than 500 polling stations that we from the European Union observed, that is quite high. And it gives the indication that these elections are genuine elections.
3%. You have been observing election right across the world. What does this figure of only 3%, we should say, mean in your index?
Well, you mean in my personal index? Because we do not compare elections from one country to another. Each and every country is different. You are on a special point in your history, and these elections are unique. So what we are trying to do is to take into account where you are, where you come from. So what we can say, and this is important to hear, people were able to cast their vote in a peaceful way. It was an inclusive election. There were polling stations in the prisons, and elderly people in, elderly homes were taken to cast their votes. So this is what we call a genuine election.
When you arrived, or your observation mission arrived almost a month ago here,
more than 1 month ago, yes.
What were your expectations initially?
Well, we from the European Union have been working with Nepal for years. So this was not a new process to us. We have been working with the election commission. We have been supporting, we have been advising. So we knew that these elections were very important for the Nepali people. We were a little bit afraid that ballot papers and identity cards would not be delivered at time. I was personally a little bit afraid that people would not be able to cast their votes because of the ID cards problem. And it was so nice to see the order in the polling stations, and that the voting lists were I can say, and here I allow myself a comparison, is one of the most beautiful voting rolls I've seen in my life, because so orderly, and you had the picture of each voter on the voting list, and then in the polling station we observed there were no problem that was given to our attention about people that were not able to identify themselves and that were hindered to cast their vote.
The biometric system and the voter's identity card that the Election Commission used this time,
Yeah.
did that help the cause?
Yes, I think so. I think that, when you have the photo of the person and that you are sharing the voters list with the political observers, and I can really tell from having seen them myself that they were all there, all the political parties, and they had the voting list with the photos and they participated, they identified the voters. So I think this was really, the technical stuff was good, and this helped also the quality of
so
the
the technical
voter cast.
aspect of this election was pretty sound as per you. What do you make out of the size of the ballot paper for especially the proportional representation system?
Yes, they were tremendously big, and I had, along with others, we feared that the ink would not be properly dried before people fold the paper, and that maybe we would have a lot of cancellation of ballot papers because
we are receiving news of cancellation because of that folding thing.
What I personally observed the counting yesterday night, and there were not a single ballot paper that was cancelled for that reason. In the first constituency in Kathmandu, they were cancelled because the voters had not get the motto right, and they had put 2 tampoons on the ballot paper. It was not an accident.
Yeah.
The accident was that they hadn't got the message right. So that is also playing by the rule. These were cancelled.
Well, correct me, Ms. Joly, if I'm wrong. 75% voters turnout in
Yes.
any election is outstanding, isn't it?
It's outstanding. It's really remarkable. And and this is also confirmed when you walk in the street, when you talk with the voters, you feel their enthusiasm. And 75% is really wonderful. Yes.
You have been observing election. Allow me to compare again. You
Yes.
said we do not compare.
No.
Now, around the world, in developed countries,
Yes.
what is the turnout like there, voters' turnout?
That depends on what kind of elections. For presidential elections, it's higher than for parliamentary elections. And the elections for European Parliament, for instance, that is for the 500 million European citizens, that is very low. It's sometimes below 40% participation. As to the presidential election, it can also reach 75 or 80% in some circumspections.
Ms. Joly, you are also the member of the European Parliament. What was your expectation when European Union is a big partner in this election process as well, has been supporting the election process? What was the expectation of European Union when this collaboration with the Election Commission started? Were you very confident that this will be the last Constituent Assembly election in Nepal?
Well, from experience, we know that to write this fundamental act, the Constitution, is always very difficult. And I think most of us were happy to see that you took the initiative to get out of the trap of this everlasting writing of a constitution, and that now we have a new democratic basis. And I think the expectation of the citizens of Europe and of the European parliamentarians is to contribute a little bit to make Nepal a real democratic state. That is what we are expecting.
I again take you back to the technical thing that we were discussing
Yes.
earlier. The polling booth where exactly the ballot paper was supposed to be put there and the mark was supposed to be put there.
Yes.
Considering the size of the ballot paper,
Yes.
what do you say of the confidentiality that should have been maintained? Did you find well maintained everywhere? Or the place a bit congested for that?
It is sure that this ballot paper is out of size. But that is also because you have 124 political parties that is running, and you don't have a rule saying that they are not allowed to run.
Yeah.
So this is democratic. And as you also have a high degree of illiteracy, that was the only way to do it probably at this stage. So it was a big paper. It maybe people could get confused, but I think there has been also voter education, and the political parties has been able to also inform their voters which image they are using. So I think it went well.
I was referring to the European Commission's view because it has been supporting the process. Are you happy with the voters' education program that the Election Commission went with?
I think that we must see how it went. As it went well, we can now say that it was okay. We can say now that when you have a 75% participation and that the number of ballots that are being invalidated is not that high, it is good.
Now, in your report that I found, your preliminary report, that some of the areas, for example, you are concerned with.
Yes.
The state of impunity in case of code of conduct violation. What you have said in your report is that there were some cases of code of conduct violation, but the Election Commission, though empowered, took the softer way.
Yes, they used, discussion, dialogue, and conviction to have violation of the code of conduct stopped. I think that was the aim, and I think their goal was not to perturbate the elections, and they could have had harder sanctions, but would that have changed the output? Probably not. So we could make better, more strict rules. As to what is important to me is financing of political parties. I do regret, as I say.
I found that also in your report.
That is
they were not transparent in your opinion.
It is not transparent enough. So here we can make progress. We could have more than a final statement of the money that you spent. We should also know where the money comes from.
So you should also go into look into the sources of the funding.
Yes.
And that was not done enough.
That is not done because it's not mandatory.
Some of the things that you said, the Election Commission took the lighter way of doing it. Don't you think it's good given the nature of this country, the developing democracy we are?
I think that is exactly, it is for us to observe and not to judge. And I think, the only thing that is important is that we have 75% of the 12,400,000 people that could cast their vote that came. That is outstanding.
Well, Ms. Joly, now going to another issue now. You have talked about electoral justice.
Yes.
Which seems to be a pretty new term here. What does electoral justice mean?
It means that very often in many countries the justice system is very slow. You need a long time to get a judgment. That is not compatible with election situations where
but
you
the
need
government
quick.
here has formed a Constituent Assembly election court.
And I think that is a very good idea, to have a special instance that can make rulings and judgments quicker than the normal justice system would do. So that is not something that I personally think is a bad thing. I think to have ways, legal ways, to settle conflicts, that is paramount.
But what you have mentioned in your report is people haven't got access to that. It's only the candidates who can do that.
Yes.
So the government had set up a fast-track judicial system to address these issues. But still in your report, what I found, I might be wrong, that the people did not have access. Somewhere there, what's the view of, let's say, the European Union, how this could have been done in a better way?
Well, this is a first step. the most important thing is that the political parties and the candidates have access to the system because they are the first interested people. And then maybe at a later stage, and that is the sense of my remark, we could open up for citizens that do observe irregularities to have access to this system, maybe with a filter, so not to be overloaded. But this will be part of my final report. I am so happy that I will be able to come back to Nepal in about 2 months. And
we would love to welcome you again as well.
Thank you. And then with the final report, because we will then have ended the observation of the whole process.
Now, what does this report, your final report, mean to the international community to shape their view about Nepal's Constituent Assembly election 2017?
I think that the European Union's observation mission, our report is first of all for the Nepali people. It is a kind, I like to think about it, as an anchor. You are able to measure the way your election day, the preparation of the election day and what followed, you are able to compare it to your own laws and to the international commitments that Nepal is part of, being a part of the international society.
Yeah.
And in a way to have an observer that are outside, I think that is important for the Nepali people, because we cannot be suspected of not wishing Nepal a good democratic future.
Do you mean to say that your report is more than for the international community, it is for the Nepali people to understand how we feel about the election?
It is for the Nepali people and for the Nepali government later
Yes,
on.
to find out their shortcomings, if any?
Yes, and this is true also in developed countries. More and more, developed countries also ask for election observation. I mean, Norway has asked for election observation, and we found weaknesses in the way they made their elections.
Just moving aside from this technical observation things, how did you find the people of this country, despite all these psychological threats and all these things, queuing up and casting their vote? You observed in some of the constituency, we could see you going there, here and there, and observing. Yeah. You must have mingled with the people also. What was your feeling when you mingled with them?
Well, I'm very impressed by the Nepali people, by their calm, their willingness, their enthusiasm, and I'm really dreaming of coming back later, not as an electoral observer, but having...
If electoral observer, not for Constituent Assembly election.
Exactly, and to enjoy your people and the environment. That is so marvelous.
Okay, Ms. Joly, now again I bring you back to your report.
Yes.
That's the most important thing for all of our viewers who are also willing to know about what report the European Union is coming up about. Now, you have talked about the role of media.
Yes.
A lot of praises for media, though there are some cases of election commission saying that they're violation of code of conduct. How did you find the media out here?
We did monitor the media as part of the pre-election period, because the space the political parties get in the media is paramount to justice, to electoral justice. And what we found, monitoring, I think it was, 16 television and tens of radios, was that there were equity here. There were very little discrepancy in the treatment, and here we are talking about minutes. So the three most important parties had absolutely close to equality in time, and there were also some efforts to give space to the smaller parties. So that is also in my report.
So you're satisfied with the role the media has played in this election?
I think we can say that you played a role that is foreseen for you to play.
Now, going back to, again, the electoral justice thing, it was a mixed system of election that we adopted this time. What is your view of the mixed system of election? Is this the best system of election? I'm not asking you to suggest what we should do, but overall.
This is really for the Nepali authorities to decide what kind of electoral system they want. You have a mixed system which will give an advantage to the most important party for first past the post part of it, and that will give a more equitable representation for the proportional part. That is well known, that is political science. So the mix of it will give an assembly with a clear majority, but where the small parties are represented. So that is a system that you can defend. What we can say is that in your representative system, the persons that will be the first, second, third, and so on are not known in beforehand. It is for the parties to distribute them. And that weakens a little bit the link between the citizens and the politicians.
One of the other issues that you've raised in your report is about inclusion.
Yes.
Women participation.
Yes.
Not just in the election, but in the election process as well.
Yes. Well, I must say that that is one of my personal subjects is that women should be treated equally as men, and also in the human right perspective, there should be equality among the genders, and I was not observing this equality in the polling centers. The polling centers were headed by men. Only 11% of the polling center were headed by a woman. And as to number 2 in the polling center, the polling officer, only 21% were women. So here, clearly, the political parties need more political will to promote women.
Well, Ms. Joly, we're coming almost to the end of our conversation. If I can ask you this question, the Constituent Assembly election in Nepal, the second Constituent Assembly election in Nepal, has been outstanding, good, or fair enough. Which one would you choose?
Well, the problem is it is not over, it's not finished, and we can only make an assessment when we have the counting finished and it's all over. So I will be happy to give this appreciation in some time. It's too early. You cannot assess this election only on the preparation period and the election day. What is happening now is also very important, and I can assure you our long-term observers are in the counting centers, and we will be following up also on what will happen with the complaints that are filed.
Thank you so much, Ms. Joly. Obviously, we hope that we will get the answer of this question once the electoral process ends in this country. Thank you so much for your presence, for your time and your thoughts. Well, that's all we have in this talk show, the Constituent Assembly election 2017 special. Thank you so much for being with us. We continue with our live update. Do follow us in our Facebook as well. Facebook.com/NTV2041 is our homepage. Thank you so much for being with us.